Hi, my name is Prashant. As I introduced myself early in the morning, I work at an NGO, non-profit organization in Bangalore in South India. I'd like to first start by thanking the Notes group for inviting me here. In June this year, I met Peter, George, Sylvia, and Massimo at a meeting in Germany on the Commons, and I consider myself, having been a recipient of their extraordinary warmth and generosity, not least in inviting me to this forum. Listening this morning to all of your introductions, I actually felt that any one of you could sit in for me, and I would be much more interested in what you say. So I'm going to try and see if I've got something interesting to say about the Commons, being very mindful of the fact that I have Peter Linebaugh on my left, Sylvia Federici in front of me, Massimo on my right. Given that context, and still make a very bold attempt to say something. ALF, briefly about what we do, we work with a number of marginalized communities, including sex workers, construction workers. We handle a number of divorce cases. We're primarily a litigating organization, but one of our founding principles is that it's a kind of theoretically engaged politics that we are trying to enter into. So a lot of these concepts, like the Commons, are something that we deliberately and consciously invoke in our first struggles. So we're very, very interested in in this term of the Commons. Not least because one of the things that we've recently been involved in is, for instance, in India right now, almost about 8 or 9 cities have ongoing projects to construct metro stations, metro underground, and these are kind of usually large level real estate scams where and in addition to that, road widening programs that are basically aimed at kind of denuding the cities of whatever green cover they have, and simultaneously wiping out the city's pedestrian population, their population of street workers, of kind of street life. And this is kind of a huge Commons issue, very directly Commons issue, because and this is actually, if you go to New Delhi, you find that it's a greatly unsafe space, although it's got very wide roads. And one of the reasons is because you've kind of cleared out public spaces where people can interact. So come nightfall, these streets become very deserted, and adds to this feeling of insecurity in the city generally. But I'm not going to talk about that generally. What I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of just give you some vignettes and probably talk around them, and then see if that interests you, and then hopefully something interesting. So in October of this year, the government of a state called Jharkhand, the center of the country, they withdrew over 100,000 cases slapped on tribals who live in forests. These were cases including stealing fruit from forest, cutting wood, grazing cattle, hunting, and entering reserve forests without permission. So 100,000 of these cases were dropped. Again, I don't want to kind of rehearse the history of enclosures in India. There's a whole lot, but kind of just to cut to the case, and a lot of you are, I'm sure, familiar with it. So that India went through the same kind of enclosure system as in Europe, with the significant difference that in India we had kind of previously also kind of hereditary servitude. People were propertyless, landless, but kind of within a kind of a traditional structure of servitude. And this kind of these are the commoners within the commoners. And that's something that kind of these are a community who are kind of traditionally overlooked in most discussions. So we kind of work a lot with them. One word that's kind of repeated when the colonial government asserts its control over these forests is that this is wasteland in a number of cases. In agricultural land, there's this notion of waste, and waste is always kind of it's land that's in the colonial imagination unused. Nobody uses it, but actually, as Peter has shown, and several ways, it's the space where people, where marginalized communities use to find their sustenance. They are kind of integrated into patterns of agriculture, to patterns of living, and kind of this assertion of waste is kind of one way of appropriating other people's sustenance. But I find that this notion of waste is also a very, very important kind of contemporary notion. We are dealing with a number of waste issues. For instance, I mean, 3-4 years ago, we had this issue of a French nuclear ship called Clemenceau, which was brought to India for dismantling, and contained a huge amount of hazardous waste, which the receiving company was in no way capable of dismantling without serious adverse health implications. That's one issue of in that particular instance, after kind of Delhi, our Supreme Court sent the ship back, so it's no longer. But the thing is that subsequent to that, we've got a couple of other ships. I mean, so a technicality. This particular ship instance continues to happen kind of without attracting official notice. We do a lot of hazardous waste work in India, and who does it is kind of something that's a big issue. The second issue of waste is, of waste-based struggles is last month in the state in South India, in Kerala, a couple of villages were kind of engaged in a very violent struggle against the state, because the state had just begun to come and dump waste, municipal waste, in the backyard of this village. And this matter again was taken to court, but also this issue of where does the waste of our living go, and who kind of picks it up? And these are India's kind of home to communities who make a living of transporting people's waste. They're called Safai Karmacharis. They exist in all cities. They carry out their work in extremely unsanitary and life-threatening situations in most cases. You'll find, weekly deaths by people who go down into manholes and poisonous liquors. So, this kind of this issue of waste for us and the commons that clears off the waste is extremely critical to our life, and it's something that we need to, speaking from our kind of a developing perspective. In a fourth sense, this system of waste is very, very ironic for us, because if you recently, if you happen to be by chance engaged in conversation with any of our captains of our industry, apparently the talk is very blatant that we're acquiring 30,000 hectares in Africa, in some country in Africa, etc., etc. And they're very serious about it. So, Indian capitalism has kind of reached a stage where we, are also vying for kind of a new imperial colonization of Africa as well on an equal term. That's something that is extremely, worrisome for us. That's considered a continent of waste, if we can just go and appropriate to whatever wishes, whatever ends we want. Okay, having kind of depressed you sufficiently,